and you may call them by those names. If we get done early, they're actually going to come up here and wrestle. So, see, they're up for it. So, all right, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. I want to thank all of you for showing up. This is the first official panel of a long weekend of B5 programming here at the Phoenix Comicon. And you know, it's all leading up to the big reunion on Saturday night, and then the B5 bingo after that. But there's still some stuff happening on Sunday too. If you did not get one of these, please raise your hand, and one of the minions will bring it to you. Keep it up until they get to you. As opposed to the beautiful Comicon booklet, which has an amazing B5 cover, although Joe called his face in the middle a misprint. That has all this information scattered. This booklet has every single B5 related thing throughout the whole weekend in one place. So you should each get one of those. You should also each get one and only one raffle ticket. Now, you will get a raffle ticket at all of the specifically B5 panels that you attend throughout the weekend. Saturday night at the B5 bingo thing at 9 o'clock, we're going to be drawing the raffle ticket for a $500 gift card to b5books.com. And there's going to be B5 bingo with a whole bunch of other prizes, including more gift certificates, autographed books, out-of-print books. It's going to be incredible, and I got to give the plug, the shout-out to Captain Jacqueline and Jason Davis and the B5 Books team, who sponsored a lot of this fan track, and they have just been tremendous. So a hand, please, for them. I want to note that I tried, this particular panel is going to repeat twice. There's going to be another iteration of it on Saturday morning. But for the most part, hi Sean, for the most part, I try to make every panel as distinct as it could be, and to cover as many different aspects of the B5 universe as possible. There's still a couple I missed. I would have loved to do spirituality in B5. Especially, Sunday I'm going to prove to Joe that he's not the atheist he thinks he is. And I hope that gets on the video that you're getting to Pat, by the way. I would love to do the lighter side of B5, because, you know, I've been rewatching the prepping for this con, and I've forgotten how funny it is, even during a lot of the darker moments. Anyway, so I'm plugging the rest of the fan track throughout the rest of the weekend. There are only a couple of conflicts, and I'm really sad that Claudia, tomorrow at noon, is conflicting with my Points of Departure panel, which is the panel I'm most looking forward to, because I'm going to go into all the different versions of B5 that never existed, and some of the spin-off material, and all of that. And I'm really excited about that one, but I think everyone's probably going to get Claudia. But if Claudia is full, please come to my panel. And then the last thing I'll mention, the other panel I'm looking forward to is called Legacies, and that's where we are going to tackle the B5 Trek issue head on, among many, many others. So, I am going to introduce myself briefly, let my panelists introduce themselves, rather. Hi, I'm Austin Powers. And then we're going to get going. But a real quick show of hands here. How many of you would call yourselves decent to hardcore B5 fans?
I would actually, what I want to know is how many people in this room are absolute virgins, not seen.
That was my next question. How many B5 noobs are in the room? No, we want you here. We love you. You're amazing. This is B5 101. So, well, we've got a few. Apologies for when you finally do watch the series. You're probably going to get some spoilers. But don't let that stop you. Anyway, my name is Matthew Yancala, variously known as Matt or Mateo. I wear many, many, many hats, but normally they all look like this do-rag I have right now. It's what I have until I can afford hair replacement again. I'm in this position because I was already part of the Phoenix Comicon organization. I am one of the few, apparently, hardcore B5 fans in the Phoenix area, and I was the right guy in the right place at the right time Well, I'm not saying that there aren't other hardcore B5 fans in Phoenix, but I was in the right place at the right time. And all I originally wanted to do was moderate the big reunion panel. That ended up not happening. But slowly, my 1 or 2 fan panels got transmogrified into, hey, can you do one more? Can you do one more? So now I'm running pretty much all of the fan track, and I'm helping on the pro side, and the two kind of melded. In fact, I took some of their stuff that they didn't have enough manpower to do. Anyway, I have many other interests and stuff, so if you have any interest in any of my other projects, please feel free to come talk to me after the panel. But I am going to throw it, why don't we do you, and then go down the panel that way. All right?
My name is Sean Cornell. I've been in fandom since 1987.
Thereabouts.
Been running conventions, doing different jobs. One of the things that I was really lucky to do is I got to be guest liaison at a lot of different local conventions, and so I got to meet a lot of pros that were coming out, including JMS and Mojo and several others that were part of B5.
And I have to add that Sean is one of the people who for years was on me to watch B5, so he's actually part of the reason I'm such a fanatic. So thank you, Sean. Let me say that publicly here.
Okay, Sean, who is JMS and who is Mojo? For those people that don't.
J. Michael Straczynski is the creator of Babylon5, and Mojo was one of the original animators. Really kind of brought the style of the show out. The CGI stuff.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to have to kind of stretch our lead. Can everybody hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm Sandy Bruckner. I was lucky enough to work with the Babylon5 fan club. I started off just going to conventions and sort of got sucked in by the whole thing. Started writing articles, wound up writing articles for other things, and working with the B5 fan club. I was lucky enough to go out to the studio a couple, 3 times, and that was very cool. Wish I knew now what I didn't know then. I would have spent a lot more time in other places. But I also went out to Vancouver to watch the Legend of the Rangers, which was very cool. Did that for sci-fi. Took care of the B5 website for TNT when I was on TNT. So I've done a lot of different things in different venues. I actually work in Washington, D.C., so that's I still have a website called ISN News, which was the forerunner of the Zo Club, which I did in sort of ASCII email for a very long time. Morphed that into the website that I have now, ISN News, and then I have a Facebook page, the Zo Club as well. And yeah. I sort of started the website when the fan club newsletter quit. So I tried to keep things moving at that point. I post as much information as I get from folks, and I've morphed it into sort of a more generalized science fiction thing. But as soon as something big comes up, I start on the page.
So you're basically Babylon5 fan central, right here, in one embodied in one person. Thank you for all that you've done. It's amazing.
Hi everyone, I'm Michael D. I'm a Phoenix local, I'm a Babylon5 fan, and I was excited to get invited, and thank you.
So my name is Tino Dodd. I am from the East Coast, like Sandy. I am the new kid on the block. I actually watched the Babylon5 2 after it went off the air. I caught a lot of as a decent sci-fi show. The special effects, well, they're dated, but the story still holds, and that's why I keep coming back to that.
And of course, you didn't have the agonizing wait that many of us had in between episodes. All right.
Amy Guskin, I own Jakar's chest.
I think you guys all beat. But why don't you give it a go, Jan?
I'm Jan Schroeder, and I've been a fan since the first episode aired. And when I got my first computer, I discovered that Joe Straczynski answered questions online. So I started asking lots of questions. These days, I'm a moderator at jmsnews.com.
Another one of the great B5 sites that's out there. So thank you, Jan. This is some powerhouse stuff. Like when I started looking, like I was desperate for panelists 3 months ago. So I just posted on a couple of Facebook groups, including Joe's, fans of J. Michael Straczynski page. I'm like, hey, are there any B5 fans coming to this con? And I was overwhelmed because, I've been visiting their sites for years, and stuff that they contributed to the B5 magazine. So it's just been, it's amazing to share this experience with them. So thank you for your introductions, and we will get on with the panel proper. I would ask, all of you guys to introduce yourselves, but we've only got 51 minutes. So, all right, so it begins. Babylon5, who knows the story of where Babylon5 came from? Okay, well, wow. Panel excluded. All right. Joe Straczynski was standing on his toilet hanging a clock. Oh, no, actually, it's even more salacious than that. He was in the shower. And he was toying with two... Edit that out of the video. Yeah. He had been working on a couple of separate ideas, both science fiction, both space-based. One was about this vast intergalactic war with governments rising and falling. The other one was intimate and based on a small set. And then in the shower one day, he realized that they could be the same story. That the intergalactic battles and epic quality could be writ small in the day-to-day operations of the station. And then, through that, you would see, forgive me for those of you who hate this movie, forgive me for this comparison, but the reason James Cameron went with two teenagers in Titanic was so that if you fell for those characters, you could then feel for all the other people who were, the whole tragedy of the thing. In a similar way, if he wrote the story with characters that you came to care about, and then that in
Characters
turn...
you care about, like Mac and Bo.
Yeah, oh yeah. Mac and Bo. Yeah, season 5. Are we going to talk much about season 5 tonight? The first half of it, at least, we may kind of gloss over. So yeah, so the other thing was he worked on shows that were, science fiction shows that were over budget and badly run by people who had no idea about science fiction. And, it's like, well, cop shows have cops as consultants, medical shows have doctors as consultants. Why had sci-fi on TV stopped going to actual, futurists and, technicians and people who had written in the science fiction field? So, I'm going to throw this to you guys. I mean, Babylon5 was a tremendous risk, but it was also,
It was a risk for more reasons than you say. Don't forget the fact that at the time, art-based television was nearly unknown in the U.S.
Yes.
And if you had a science fiction show, it was Creature of the Week, Alien Race of the Week, and Joe conceived this entire thing as a novel for television. 5 years. He had a beginning, he had a middle, he had an end. And up until then, you really didn't see that much. I mean, Twin Peaks preceded it by just a little.
Yeah,
but
and,
we weren't
Wise
really
Guy.
seeing this. And now, those of you youngsters out here, that's all you're used to seeing is, what was the series arc that season on Buffy or, something more recent than Buffy, only
Well, Battlestar Galactica, Farscape.
Yeah, but we're used to seeing that, and at the time that really wasn't done, and networks didn't like it because they thought they weren't going to get new viewers after the first episode because people would feel like they couldn't come in the middle. So he was taking a risk in that regard as well.
Not to mention going up against Star Trek Juggernaut, which is a whole other story, which is part of why it took him 5 years to sell the show. On this side of the group, anything you guys want to add to that part of the discussion here?
I think it's important to touch on the 5 years that it took him to sell. He actually commissioned artwork to take around to the studio to say, see, this is what I want to do. And they didn't get it. One of the famous stories that he tells is, one of the studios executives, how do they stay up on the top of that? Because, of course, the station wrote. He said it was super. I don't think he sold it that way.
Well, and one of the other things was he went to Warner Brothers finally, and the whole, this is pretty well known, but I'm just going to throw it out there. Star Trek Next Generation came out in '87. It took a while to find its feet, but by year 2 or 3, it was pretty damn good. I'm a fan. And he figured rather than fight the Trek Juggernaut, I'll go to the people who made Star Trek. So he took his pilot script and his series overview, and he pitched it to Paramount. And they basically sat on it for a year and said, well, we like the idea, but we just don't want to go with this now. Fine, okay. Then he got a green light at Warner Brothers. And funnily enough, all of a sudden, Paramount announces new space-based science fiction show, Deep Space Nine, with
A space station.
a wormhole, a shapeshifter. The shapeshifter in the V5 pilot was actually meant to be a shapeshifter, not a changeling net. He actually had to go revise his original idea to avoid being accused of being a Star Trek ripoff, which is exactly, and we'll touch on this more in the panel tomorrow, but that's exactly what Paramount wanted people to perceive. They would never admit it. The Trek producers would never admit it, and Joe has always been very careful to not point fingers. Moreover, anyone who made those decisions at Paramount is long, long gone, especially in But nevertheless, everyone in Hollywood gets ripped off or rips somebody else off. It happens. There are knockoffs. For every repo genetic opera, you get a repo band, for example. It happens. But in this particular case, it was heinous because Paramount went out of their way, again, not publicly, but they tapped into the very passionate fan base to, this fan base is supposed to believe in IDIC, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. And, Gene Roddenberry, who embraced, to a degree, some of the other science fiction franchises that were out there. One of my favorite pictures is Gene Roddenberry and George Lucas shaking hands. But B5, low-budget upstart that it was, syndicated upstart that it was perceived as enough of a threat that Paramount wouldn't have minded if it went away. And funnily enough, everything they did actually served to strengthen it. So, yeah, that definitely plays into that.
So did we find out, we asked who were hardcore fans, we asked who doesn't know anything, who knows something about Babylon5, maybe seen an episode or two. All right, so we really do have people here who might not know that much. Yeah, so do we want to talk about what is Babylon5 about, what the characters are, what the setting is, do we want to really be basic if it's a one-on-one?
Well, let's go with that. Okay, how many of you watched the 5 years of the show? Okay. And you maybe watched some of the TV movies and stuff too? All right. Now, I want to know, keep your hands up. I want to see this. I want to see how this goes. How many of you have read a B5 comic or graphic novel or novel?
How many of you have bought a piece of memorabilia?
How many of you have read any of the script books or episode guides? Yeah, okay, it's going lower with each and every single one. You guys are really going to want to come to some of the other panels, I promise you. We'll touch on stuff tonight, but we will...
How many of you have an embarrassing story to tell with one of the cast members? Love it.
Talk to me Sunday night. Anyway, did you have a question, sir?
Seeing as how there are so many new people, you might want to tell them why it's Babylon 5.
Okay, well, the five has several different meanings. 5-year story arc. 5 years to sell the 5-year story arc. Within the show, there were Babylon 5 is a physical space station. There were 4 stations that preceded it. Babylon's 1, 2, and 3 were sabotaged.
All of which were complete failures.
Yes. And then Babylon 4 disappeared in mysterious circumstances. Yeah. Well, you know.
Tap dancing.
So yeah, again, I assume that I was going into a knowing audience, so there are going to be spoilers tonight. I apologize, but don't let that stop any of you casual or new fans from re-exploring the show. Yeah, we can dance around if you
I mean, it's a
do a
show
hula.
that has been over for 20 years. Well, not over, but almost over for 20 years. Started 20 years.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
You know, it's. I mean, I had my favorite story twist spoiled, unfortunately, before I got to it, which happens right around the middle of season 3 for those of you on this panel.
World without end.
It's still my favorite, and it pertains to Babylon 4. But so yeah, so that is why Babylon 5. You know, that's how it came to be. That's a very rough overview of how it came to be. So why don't we say something, and I'm going to throw this to whichever one of you beats the others to the mic. Explain.
I wonder who that'll be.
Now give the others a chance. Actually, no. I'll throw this to Sean because you were already entrenched in local sci-fi fandom and conventions, and you know you were an early adopter online as well. And then everyone can feel free to chime in on this. What was it like when Babylon 5 emerged on the scene publicly?
It was non-existent. Very, very few people actually knew about it, knew when it was. You couldn't find it on TV. It played in off hours. Yeah.
That was the precursor to the WB network, a syndicated network that Warner Brothers tried to start.
The thing that actually attracted me to it were, to be quite honest, the computer graphics that they did interacting with the live action story. It was groundbreaking in that aspect of my life.
One of my favorite stories also was when at the Emmy Awards in 1993, this was before Lucas brought Star Wars back. Lucas was sitting at the next table from Straczynski, and he was there for young Indiana Jones. And Joe tells a story about how every time the sample footage for B5 would show up on the monitors, Lucas would just squint and look real close and study that footage. And it was about a year later that he announced the special editions and the prequels. So there's a funny bit of trivia. How about you guys? What you're in movies, so not so much you, but Jan and Sandra. What do you remember of when B5 hit?
I started watching like with episode 2, and I just found it's one of those shows that, to me, the characters were the thing that drew me in. And at that point, the internet was just starting to kick off. That we went through Genie and looked for just about everything we could find on the topic. But for you people who have just started to watch the series, and for even people who've seen it, I'm curious, how many people have watched it more than one time through?
And so it's an entirely different story the second time around, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
This is one show that no matter how many times you watch it, you will see something different each and every time, something that you missed. And I always thought, I was paying attention.
Oh yeah, watching it now on a bigger television, you see so much more. And some of it's funny because they're hidden stuff that's not there. You couldn't see it on a smaller screen. The buttons weren't there. But it was amazing.
Yeah.
It was just amazing at the time. I had trouble finding people to watch it with and to talk about it with, but the aliens, they didn't just have a little thing like a lot of the shows had to be, oh, this is a brand new species. It looked like a new species. It was a new concept. It was so much fun to see something new and different on TV, and having to find it was such a pain. But you looked, you spent your time to find it.
I want to jump in on that because you said that the alien species really look like different species. I have a story to throw in. I headed a team of like 11 of us fans who donated money. They donated money to me, and we bought one of the car masks, and we donated it to the Museum of the Moving Image in New York, and it's there now. And so Babylon 5 and Andreas are in the museum, which is really nice. But when this mask came into my house, it came in a presentation box on a live cast of Andreas' face, and well, the funny thing was that the mask slipped off in shipping, so I opened the box, and there, Andreas died already, and there was Andreas' face staring at me, which was kind of disconcerting. But so I had to take it out of the presentation box. I called someone who formerly worked at Optic Nerve to get some advice on how to get it back glued onto the thing so they could take it around the museums. And so I had to handle it. I had to look at it. My husband and I were like, we're fascinated. We don't want to touch it too much because we don't want to hurt it. But we looked at it, and what he said to me was, this looks like it's real alien skin. You've like seen an alien. I mean, it didn't look like anything. And this is just prosthetic without anyone's face under it animating it. And I mean, the show looked so good because this is the level of care that was taken. That, I'm looking at this thing close up. It was never meant to be seen close up. And I swear to God, it looked like skin.
The girl just wasn't being agreeable.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll touch a little bit more on that tomorrow on the in the making of panel, which we have some pro guests for that one. We have some people who actually work on the show are going to be part of that one. But definitely one of the things about B5 is that they made every dollar count. I mean, every dollar was on the screen. Even you mentioned that some of the effects were dated. At the time they were state of the art. They were so state of the art that after season 3, Paramount, who'd been using models for Star Trek, physical models, stole B5's effects team for Voyager. So, yes, sir, Paul.
But state of the art in a very unusual way, too, because...
Well, right.
Because
computer
it's
graphics.
desktop machines.
Yeah, them originally on Amigas.
But then the stuff that they did with the sets was more, owed more to theatrical tradition, the way they painted flats and things. So it's interesting the way they drew from the past and the future.
And then too, and this goes to something Michael brought up. B5, it had its story, it had its structure. Joe, basically knew what he wanted to do with the show. But at the same time, unlike other franchises, not just Star Trek, but unlike other franchises, it wasn't weighted down by decades of continuity and contradictory continuity. And he really made an effort to actually keep everything straight. Even the licensed fiction and the comics, some of it is better than others, but it all fits into part of the overall story.
He even had a plan, if he didn't get continued, to shorten the story after season 3, after season 4.
Get the important stuff in.
Yeah.
So.
Because they got to renew so easily.
Yeah, that's the struggle to get renewed every year is a whole other thing. But you know what? Speaking of breaking rules, actually, Amy just commented this year, reminded me that this is supposed to be B5 101. So it is an overview, and that's a valid point. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to break the rules here. I'm going to throw this to you guys. Who here has always wondered about something about B5? Like something specific, or a character, or a story, or anything? Yes, tall guy standing.
My buddy let me borrow the DVD collection stuff, and I was watching some of the commentary stuff. Well, they were saying that they got this crew in to build the sets that's worked on other sci-fi sets, and there was this one object that they put in all the goods that they produced.
Yeah.
What is it?
I don't know. Can we? Is that safe to talk about this? Do you think?
I don't see any reason why not.
I don't remember exactly what it's called. Yeah, it's from, it originated in Buckaroo Banzai in 1984 or 85, and whenever that movie came out. And it's this one prop that's just floated around virtually every science fiction movie or TV show in the last 30 years.
They put it in MedLab, right?
Yeah, it's in MedLab, I believe. It's in virtually all of them. So, yeah, that's a great in-joke. There's another great story about Babylon5.
Does everybody here already know that story?
All right. Okay, well, do we want to tell the Babylon5 story? All right. So, y'all know the episode where they put up a store. He is here, yes. They put a store on Babylon5 to try and merchandise, and that was kind of their comment. Even though real B5 merchandise did come out later, some of it was really cool. But so that was all basically a setup for the fact that Peter David, who's a fine novelist, he's worked with Star Trek, he's worked with other things. His wife at the time gave JMS a teddy bear called Babylon5 with the initials JS, Joe Straczynski.
Yeah, she had it made from one of those Vermont teddy bear type places,
Yeah.
so it was personal.
Custom, yeah. So he gave this thinking that it would be a fine gift. Well, it turns out that Joe hates cute. Cannot handle cute. One of his earliest rules for B5 was no robots and no cute kids. And if you'll notice,
And what happens to the cute kid?
yeah, the cute kids die or get shipped off somewhere terrible. So yeah, Babylon5 comes along and he puts it in the store. Then then through his proxy Cypher Sheridan, another JS. I think there's a pattern there. Jeffrey Sinclair. Anyway, Sheridan sees the initials and freaks out and spaces the bear. And that's when Lieutenant, One Scene Wonder sees it in outer space and
Kepper, everybody's favorite.
Kepper, probably a really nice guy, and I hope he has
Along
a good
with
career.
Mac and Bo.
You have a fixation with Mac and Bo. What's the problem? Now, look, I could see a Rebo and Zooty spinoff. Okay, I'm not sure about Mac and Bo. Really? Yeah. Having said that, so the bear gets space. So in retaliation, Peter David was writing some children's animated sci-fi show a few years later, and these people come across the bear floating in space. and the thing is, oh my God, who would be cruel enough to space a bear? And the answer would be, oh, well, that was done by the Strazin. They're a race that wants to take over the galaxy, but they don't have the budget for it.
If the show had run 5 or 10 more years, Joe would have gotten back at Peter because Joe had a really long memory when it came to getting back at people, which leads you to the joke script story.
There is something I cannot talk about right now. Yes, I know of this.
Everybody.
So, anyway, more to you guys. You know what? I'm going to throw this specifically to the handful of people here who are new to B5. Raise your hands again, please. All right. What
do you need to know to start watching it?
What do you need to know, first of all, and what made you curious enough to even come to this panel? Anyone, raise your hand and I'll pick you. Blue shirt
guy.
Can we find episodes online for free?
Not legally.
Are they streaming somewhere?
Netflix got rid of it about 6 months ago.
It's pretty cheap, and your library may even have it, or interlibrary loans. It's pretty cheap. Find a friend who has
It's
it.
not hard to find.
If you have internet access for your TV, you can find, I forget the website, but this morning I found a site that had the first 2 seasons.
WB, I was just going to say.
Yeah.
My wife's kind of new to
Oh,
it. She
WB
watches
started?
it.
Now, I will
Nobody
mention.
has it, they pull it, they have it. So
Well,
you should watch it fast, because they're very, very flighty.
There could be a whole panel in and of itself about Warner completely not understanding what they have. They know that, well, You know, they had Harry Potter, they have, you know, the Lord of the Rings movies. They mostly didn't mess up Batman. We'll see what they do with Superman. But they don't understand that they have a potential franchise juggernaut on their hands. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people in this room will remember, you know, years and years and years when you would mention Doctor Who and people would go, what? And now look at it. There are like squadrons of teenage girls who are obsessed with Doctor Who. Where were they when I was in high school? I personally think that there were exceptions, but it was the exception, not the rule. Of course, part of that is just the geek culture.
He was an old man.
Yeah, that's true. But, you know, part of that is just the geek culture has overtaken regular culture. Yes, culture, lady, right there.
Lady.
Look, I slept 3 hours in 2 days. Please forgive me.
Okay, so I'm just rewatching it. I never did get to finish it. I didn't finish Babylon5, but we started to rewatch it again with my daughter, who's a teenager now. But, so, I can't remember. Kosh and his race, good guys, bad guys, who are they?
The Vorlons.
Well, that's a very interesting question.
Lawful neutral. That's a good answer.
You see, this is one of these important points about Babylon 5 is that nobody's just mwah. You know, because most people in the world are not like that. So you've got people who have one kind of motivation, and they might seem to be good for part of the series, and then after a while you might think maybe they're not so good. But, you know, they don't think that they're so bad. They think that they've got the right motivation for something. They've got intention, that they're doing something, and it works for them, and they think it might work for you, but it might not be so good for you. So everybody is shades of gray.
And that includes the quote-unquote enemy race, the Shadows.
Yeah.
They had their own motivation, their own reasons for doing things. It was different, and they did horrific things in the process, but they had their reasons.
But the thumbnail version is, at the beginning of the series, we are meant to think Warlon's good, Shadow's bad.
Similarly, we are meant to think Londo good, Jakarta. And that gets turned on its head too.
Who are you and what do you want?
Who are you and what do you want? That's another panel. You guys want to make that panel?
Guy hat.
Yes, Fedora.
The one episode that, the one that always stuck out for me was first season, I think episode 5, was the one where they talked about all the religions.
Yes.
And that was one
Parliament Dreams, that's actually 2.
Yeah, because that was one that was just, they explained all the different religions, and you really got to know all the different alien races in there.
Right.
Yeah, well, that was one of the things. Babylon5 didn't give you token aliens. They didn't even give you token alien cultures. Even within, like, let's say the Narn, Jakar and his aide, the one that survived, Nataf. Funny story, he wanted to do the Murphy Brown dying secretary thing every week for a while, but that didn't work out. They were diametrically opposed, and they were, even in Star Trek. Yeah. Well, she was an agnostic kind of follower of Jalan, but yeah. Even in Star Trek, Klingons are Klingons, and they disagree, but at the end of the day, they're still Klingons. Here, there are severe...
Joe didn't believe in monoculture.
Yeah, absolutely not. Which is why, like, the Centauri had plenty of different accents, and were always plotting against each other. Although, seriously, sometime watch Caligula and then the first six episodes of season 4. It's an interesting experience. All right. Yes, Black Shirt.
Yeah, one of the things I had to explain to a lot of the new people I've introduced Babylon5 to is, but they changed commanders at the end of the first season. What's up with that?
Funny story about
Give
that.
us the what's up with that.
Come to my panel at noon tomorrow, and we'll go into heavy detail. The short answer is this. Joe came up with a long-term storyline. And at its fullest extent originally, it was actually a 10-year storyline, not a 5-year storyline. And the character of Jeffrey Sinclair was intended to follow the story through all the way. But after that first year, he took a look at where the show was at, where the story was at, and simultaneously the actor was considering other options, and he was getting a lot of pressure to basically ditch this stiff, wooden, non-leading man and replace him with someone more recognizable.
Well, Joe never realized
he was
No, but
getting
I
pressure from.
understand, but, you know, he will not say that that's the reason, he said
No.
people had differing interests.
Yeah, people had different interests.
Fans may think one thing, but we don't really know what went on behind those closed doors.
Well-
But I think for the purposes of your friend, what you could say is that, well, you know, Sinclair doesn't, you know, he's not the commander anymore, but he doesn't leave the story, which is true.
He is.
Yeah,
He's the one who was, but you're not gonna tell him that.
well, I'm not. I'm going to say that his storyline is actually my personal favorite storyline of any character in Babylon 5.
Oh, yeah.
And I really, you know, I wish there had been more with that character. Having said that, whatever led to the departure of the actor, it was a combination of things, commercial, creative, whatever. I still think the change worked out because Joe was also able to tighten his story and get the most important parts of it in. And I actually think long-term the arc was better for it. The original arc, which we'll discuss tomorrow, is really interesting. It contains most of what we know from the familiar Babylon 5, but it's in a different order with things emphasized differently. So yeah, if you make the panel at noon tomorrow, if not, it's in volume 15 of the script books. Yes, sir, with the beard.
Now, in Babylon 5, at the beginning of season 2, they do explain why he goes back to Earth, kind of tying it into the fact that he knew about Kosh like the doctor did too.
Yeah, that was definitely, they managed he managed to really artfully keep all of those threads. In a few cases, he repurposed things so that they had different meanings. For example, Babylon 4 was originally supposed to go into the future, not the past. That's something a lot of people don't know. So he was really good at building what he called trapdoors into the story. And having a backup character in every case, having a backup plotline in every case. For example, when the telepath switch happened at the end of season 2, which again, yeah, the first telepath switch, kind of sucked for that character who you've invested in by that point, but it worked really well for the story long term. So, yes, sir.
So I'm an old fan, and I have my lovely new fan here. I wondered if you guys could speak to how the DVDs were remastered in widescreen and surround sound, and to encourage the new people about how great that is.
They were actually all completely filmed in widescreen originally. They weren't remastered.
The first American show to do that.
And TV at the time just wasn't technologically able to show it. So they were actually showing you the widescreen version, and they were cutting off and
cropping it.
Yeah.
Does it pan and scan?
Yeah, I mean it's a 185, which isn't, you're not losing a lot of information of the pan and scan version. And depending on which version of the DVDs you get, because Europe actually has a different framing than we do. It's really complicated. But the bottom line is this: 1993. I don't know how many of you, either you or people you know, would occasionally watch a movie or buy a tape, say, I don't understand why those black bars are at the top and the bottom. And you'd either have to have it explained to you or explain it to somebody else, but no, you're not missing half the picture, you're getting more of it. In 1993, a whole decade before widescreen TVs, Joe Straczynski saw this was the future, and he prepared for it. Unfortunately, because of the technology of the time, he wasn't able to prepare for it as fully as we might have liked, and render the graphics in super high resolution, which is the reason we will likely never get Blu-ray or high def versions.
And then Warner Brothers.
Yeah. See, Paramount went to great expense to literally remove every grain, every scratch from every frame of Next Generation and the original series, recomp all of the effects. Unfortunately, I don't see Warner Brothers ever going to that same length.
Actually, as time has gone on, turns out that it wasn't that the technology wasn't there to do the CGI in widescreen. It was a decision that was made not by Joe, because it would have cost about $50 extra per episode to render it in widescreen. And the decision was made outside of Joe's office to not do so.
That's something I didn't know. Thank you.
That just really kind of came out in the last year.
What
Wow,
about
thank you.
the surround sound?
I can't speak very much to that. I should, because I'm a minor Does anyone in the audience know anything about the surround or the sound mix aspect of the show?
I have a great home theater, and I was just so, felt like I was in a movie theater watching this fantastic show.
Well, I think it's just safe to say that they were on their game with the budget and the time they had to do, and they were very forward-thinking to do as much as they possibly could.
But the other point is that really this show is about the fantastic story. And, we all still watch things that are much older and have much more in the way of, technological limitations and stuff. And we don't say, oh, Casablanca, boy, it's a shame it's in black and white. It's really the same thing. I mean, Babylon5 is such a good story that, even if you feel like a twinge of disappointment over the rendering of the composite shots and the DVDs, which we shan't talk about, it's still got that fantastic story, and that's really what it's all about.
The story overcomes any of those technical limitations.
Remember, at the time, rendering computer graphics was not an easy thing. You were having to buy computer processing cycles from anybody that had free computers, and they were coming down to the wire every week rendering the show, trying to get it on the air.
There's actually the season 2 finale. There's a famous scene, and then after this, green shirt and blue shirt. There's a famous scene that when it originally transmitted, I think Londo was in the scene, and you can actually see the exit sign of the studio. And apparently those tapes are still out there. They fixed it later.
How about the teapot raider? I put that video. If you go on YouTube and search teapot raiders, you'll see that. Jan, was that that was the first DVD issuing or something? The teapot thing, or was that the way they showed it on?
No, it was in the rerun.
Oh, that was it. This was it. Okay, Sci-Fi was running that. It was one of the Sci-Fi runs. And there's a scene where Londo has smuggled a gun onto the station in the form of parts of a very elaborate Centauri teapot. And he's carefully putting it together while Sinclair is out on a run trying to catch these raiders. And he's describing on the comm to probably Ivanova, what do the raiders look like? And he says, I have a feeling they look like this. And they were supposed to cut to the ship. Instead, they cut to the teapot. I snatched this. I taped it on my trusty VCR at the time, and I transferred it. And yes, if you go to YouTube and look up Teapot Raiders, you'll see that, the way it aired. And of course, they corrected it for the DVDs. I remember at the time, I said they really need to put it in that format, just that little clip on the extras. But did they listen to me? No.
Well, that's what YouTube is for.
I know, fantastic.
All right, gentleman in the green shirt, then the gentleman in the blue shirt, and then Paul, and we will start winding down.
Without a doubt, it had a great storyline and cutting-edge special effects for the time. But one of the things that struck me was it was one of the first times I saw a lot of product placement in a television show.
Zima.
The Kawasaki.
We still love Zima.
His household guy.
There was only two? Because I thought it was every time they showed RC.
Two products.
Two products.
Zima and the motorcycle.
And in a lot of other shows, I would say that's selling out, but in B5, that helped keep it alive.
And I was wondering how much of that was their budget.
I think, well, I know the motorcycle, Kawasaki was a major sponsor, right? So, yeah, and Zima was too, so that's just how it happened. It was the price, if you want to call it price.
Darn bad squad.
All right, yes, sir.
Sorry, I tried to last year very stupidly the idea of the possible regions. Popular thing, which is from power about that.
I don't know much about that right now. I don't know. Talking about a reboot of the show. A couple of years ago, I guess there was an offer on the table for him to do like original content, which I think might have been web-based. I'm not certain. That for one reason or another fell through.
I don't think he'd reboot because he
reboot.
said no one else would ever play Jakar but Andreas.
Right.
Actually, I know a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
It was for a new venue, but I never did find out exactly what. So if they had done a web series or something, we don't know. It was a reboot, but to a specific question on Jakar, Amy's right, he said nobody would ever play Jakar, but at another post online, he said that in the reboot version, Jakar would have been a revered figure from the past,
Okay.
so.
All right, well, very good to know. And that question, I can pretty much tell you that the man who can really give you an answer to the question of the future of E5 will probably be answering it at some point this weekend. Go to the big cast panel. Paul.
I just wanted to say about that shot with Mondo.
Yeah.
As far as I know, that wasn't an issue of getting things rendered in time. It was just
Yeah, it was
a question of putting
the shot in, dropping the shot in. Well, it's kind of like the East End, West End thing in the Jack the Ripper episode, too. Why does every science fiction show have to do with Jack the Ripper? So we haven't heard a lot from this side of the table, and we've got, some heavy hitters over here, and someone who has a fresh perspective. So before we start winding down, I'd like to hear a little bit from you guys. But just, I don't know, whatever you want to say about Babylon5, this is your opportunity.
Shadow, Borderline, Dropsy.
Green or purple, yeah, you can do it.
First one.
Shadow or the Warlock walk into a bar. Take that and run with it.
Everybody leaves.
Yeah, we'll end with that, actually. Yeah, please, go on. Speak to us.
One of the fun things that I found with the show was that it made you think. I mean, most shows, that I've watched, don't do that. And the other thing is that it makes you pay attention. Only because, the storyline is not just the obvious, but an underlying and a layered effect. And I think that's what, for a person who really enjoys the genre, the medium, the story, that's what draws you in, and you just can't get enough of it.
One thing I've always said is that E5 makes me think, it makes me feel, and it makes me laugh. And
3 for 3.
So I wanted to talk about the monoculture that Matt brought up.
It's all right.
Sorry about that.
Totally fine.
Credit where it's due. Sorry. So I like the fact that B5 actually took the time to go into the alien races, to give you a really, what's going on behind the scenes, their culture. Like the Day of the Dead was one of my favorite standalone episodes. Where they showed culture of an alien race, and one of their high holidays. Also,
Here, Day of the Dead.
yes.
I actually have a tiny problem with that episode.
It's a horrible episode? That's a big
I
problem.
didn't say I gotta say this because it irks me every single time. Jakar gets this fear that he doesn't want to sleep in the Mercury section.
Yeah.
And Jakar was a religious figure. Jakar was interested in religion. He was a very spiritual guy. I really don't think he would have done that. I know they had to get him out of there, but I almost wish they had just not read into the episode at all.
Everyone has something that scares the willies out of them, so that's just...
You really didn't like that one, huh?
Not bad, no.
All right. Sandy? Anything you wanted to close with?
No, I'm just thrilled that there are a number of newbies here, which means, the show is still out there, is still becoming a new entity for people, and
All seasons are still available on iTunes.
Okay.
there's
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah, it's not hard to find if you look for it, except on broadcast television. Yeah. Feature.
Okay. Yeah, about that, what was that, the Day of the Dead episode?
Yes.
Yeah. Are you kind of relieved that episode kind of contradicts the Soul Hunters concept of the souls, disappearing?
I think there's room for both.
I don't know that it does. I mean, we don't know why those 3 people were still hanging around. And I mean, my own spirituality says that there are people who hang around for a time for certain reasons, and then, souls can go elsewhere. So these people maybe we're not done yet. Maybe, so I don't really have a problem with it.
And that actually brings up something interesting, and I think we're going to, with all apologies, hold your questions. Those of you who didn't get a chance to ask, we'll try and squeeze you into another panel. That brings up an interesting question. Joe is very on record with his being an atheist. But his atheism strikes me almost as the diametric opposite of, say, a Dawkins atheist, in that he's not at war with spirituality. In fact, he once said that he's not going to make Babylon 5 or anything he does a polemic on what he does or doesn't believe, because at that point it just becomes grandstanding, and it also limits the dramatic possibilities of the story, and it limits the characters being ciphers for his own views.
Well, if people would only write what they believe, then no one would really write science fiction. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well.
So I don't have a problem with atheists writing.
Yeah, well, no, I'm saying that's great.
Yeah.
I'm saying that's fantastic, that he's not,
But I mean, I don't think it means secretly that he's not really an atheist.
No, and I'm not saying that. I mentioned that
I don't
earlier.
think Tolkien was an elf, actually.
No, well, Tolkien was a diehard Roman Catholic, believe it or not. But, what I'm saying is it's fantastic that, that he didn't go into it with that kind of agenda.
Right.
And unfortunately, that does exist out there. For example, if you ever, I was almost gonna mention him, but I'm gonna go even lower into the barrel than that. If you ever get a chance, and I apologize right now if this offends anyone in the room. I sincerely apologize. I respect everyone's beliefs. But if you read the Twilight books, and you replace vampire with Mormon, and werewolf with Native American, and Volturi with Catholic, it makes so much more sense. The Volturi. The decadent evil vampires from Italy. Yeah. And don't even get me started on the host. We've got about 5 minutes here. I have a couple of last things I want to cover. I want to thank you all before I forget. Also, anyone who did not get a raffle ticket or a program who came in late, please raise your hand. No cheating on the raffle tickets. Please.
And remember, those of you who have embarrassing stories of cast members, see me.
Yeah, she will make sure that they get told at another panel.
I just want to hear.
Okay, well that's it. So I just want to mention, for me, one of the big things about B5 was that it was an epic. And Joe Straczynski was influenced by Lord of the Rings. I'm a huge fan. Influenced by classic sci-fi, classic fantasy, classic myth and legend and fairy tale, but also history and politics and human nature. So, it is this tremendous blending, and it is one person's vision. Even Star Trek at the beginning, Gene Roddenberry had the idea, but Gene Kuhn and Dorothy Fontana and a bunch of other people who later worked on Babylon 5.
Right. Joe wrote 92 of 110.
Yeah, he wrote 92 of 110 episodes, plus a bunch of TV movies and spin-offs and stuff. It almost killed him, but, it is one man's vision. And there's very little you can say. Even the new Battlestar, which I loved, there was still a writer's room, where they sat around and figured out, okay, we set this up 3 seasons ago, what are we going to do now? If anything, Joe gave himself too many options. So I'm going to let this side of the table close things out. Any final thoughts you guys have? And then we're going to end on a fun and light note that Sean and I have.
I still own the chest.
And you still have us all beat.
I don't know the chest.
You just have a cavity there?
No one else. I do own my own. This one.
It could be illegal for you to own anybody else.
Depends on her. She owns the car. Well, it's her part of it.
Alright, any final thoughts, guys?
No, that was my final thought.
That was more like, you guys can test it.
Those of you who haven't seen the show, watch the show.
Watch the show.
Don't listen.
Movies.
This is important. This is important. Don't let first season deter you. There are some
Or the
people
pilot.
who it's a little,
Little
It
creepy.
will reward you. Things from episode 1, you will be rewarded at the end of episode 5. It is worth it. Get through the first season. It's important.
Season 1, episode 3 will tie in with season 2, episode 9, and you will just, again, the second viewing is even more fun than the first one.
Is the Hitchhiker's Guide still around?
The what now?
Hitchhiker's Guide?
Wrong panel.
You mean the Workers Guide? Well, I saw the name for the little program here, but it's still up. It's still up. It's still online. I don't know how much it gets updated. I don't think it really does, but the information is mostly still valid as far as I know. Yes, sir, in the beard. Were you waiting for a question, or are you waiting for?
Actually, I want to make a statement.
Okay.
All the newbies that are going to watch it,
Yes.
make sure you watch The Gathering first, which is the movie that starts it off. And
Do not watch in the beginning, unless you mute one particular scene. And I can't tell you which scene, or else it'll spoil.
And then you're going to want to watch it to the end of the second season, actually.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, in terms of things paying off, make sure you watch The Gathering. Believe it or not, this is how the whole thing ties together. There's a thing that happens in The Gathering. The pilot movie, which is paid off in the second to last ever episode.
Yeah. So thank you. I've been rewatching the show in preparation of the panels, but I got as far as third space last night, and I just
Oh God,
hit
yeah,
the
you
wall.
know what? The AV Club at The Onion is doing 2 episodes a week. They're doing a rewatch.
Yeah.
Rowan Kaiser. They're up to, gosh, where are they now? Probably not they're way home.
What happened to the doctor and the lieutenant commander from the pilot?
The doctor was transferred back to Earth, and Commander Takashima was transferred to a ship. Originally, she was going to be the one who shot Garibaldi at the end of season 1. So here's the funny final note while she looks that up. Okay, yeah, AV Club, Onion, they're connected. All right, so our little group watching B5 in the 90s, we had our own names for the Koshes. So Kosh 1, Kosh Duranic, number 1, we called him Kosh Yaya.
And the reasoning behind that is that Matt and I have always talked in the past about how there are parallels between all different kinds of sci-fi stories, and we can look at this story and look at that story, and very similar themes. So, just like we were talking about the oscillation overthrust being in like every episode, every Kosh has the same name. Where do you see that? Like the Comicon. They're all named John, right? So,
Yep. Well, hang on.
every Vorlon has to have a last name in my mind.
So Kosh Yaya.
The one that replaces him is Kosh Smallberries.
And the ship.
Yeah, so there's a scene in, I don't want to give too much away, but there's a scene where there's a Vorlon fleet flying through hyperspace, and then coming through the hyperspace cloud, all of a sudden there's a ship, and I'm just like, Kosh Big Boutte.
So that is the takeaway that we want you guys to have. From now on, I want all of you to refer to Kosh 1 as Yaya, Kosh 2 as Smallberries, and the fleet or the Vorlon ship as Big Boutte. No, not Kosh Vader. That's a whole other thing. And if you haven't seen Buckaroo Banzai, find it and watch it. All right, folks, we're done for the night. Thank you. You're awesome. Please come to more panels and tell your friends to watch B5 so we can get a sexy reboot a la Doctor Who. Faith managers, folks. Have a good night.